Thank you very much, Jane, for having us over here today. I'd love you to tell us a little bit about your journey at CMS, when you started, the roles you've done, and what you do today.
So my name's Jane Challoner and I'm Head of Tech Innovation at CMS. I've been here a long time, about 16 years, and CMS actually paid for me to go to law school and become a lawyer in the first place. And I've been lucky, I think, over that time to have a variety of different roles. So I've been a banking lawyer, I've worked for our Central and Eastern European offices as Head of Knowledge and People. I've been Head of Learning and Development, and I've done sort of a series of management projects. And towards the end of that time, I sort of started focusing on our document life cycle and how we could bring efficiencies around documents, our use of documents generally, given it's such a huge area of sort of focus and investment for law firms. And through that, really, I kind of fell almost into innovation, because whilst researching documents, it became obvious to us that there were so many really, really interesting applications in the legal tech space that we could be investing in and that would bring real value to our firm.
I'm really curious to know how much you think a law firm's changed in the last 10 years. So in particular, what were the technologies, the changes that a lot of lawyers thought would never come into the industry that have, and now they're an integral part of day-to-day business as usual work?
I mean, I think probably the obvious one that everybody would say is email. I think, email now is just, well, to be honest, virtually out of control in law. I think, in other sectors, people are perhaps in the post-email world, but in terms of collaboration tools and software. But I think when we look at new technologies at the moment, we still focus on the fact that our lawyers live in Outlook. That's their hub, and everything really has to work around the edges of that kind of home spot for people. So I think when you look back, say, even 10 years ago, 20 years ago, email was so much smaller an aspect of what people did. And in fact, when I was a trainee, the relative, trainees and other junior members of staff didn't have mobile devices. They weren't able. I remember being nervous on certain transactions and going into the office at the weekend to check my emails because I was worried about what might have happened. I mean, that just seems kind of unthinkable now. I think the thing for me that's really changed is when I started work, the technology in the firm, it kind of, perhaps old-fashioned as it may seem now, was far ahead of consumer technology. So if you got a BlackBerry with work, whatever your PC on your desk was, it tended to be better than what people had at home. Whereas I think the huge kind of seismic shift is now that people are being kind of pushed, whether it's our own lawyers or our clients' expectations being pushed by consumer tech. So one quite practical example that we've seen of that is on basically kind of tracking and reporting. So we did have a period where we were able to track and report on our lawyers' metrics, but actually there was some resistance to actually seeing this information. People weren't even particularly interested in their own data, let alone being put in a kind of comparable situation, vis-a-vis their colleagues. Whereas I think the rise now of wearables and just the ubiquity of kind of data on, almost everything that you do has meant that there's a genuine interest from people now in seeing their own data and actually seeing, themselves in a kind of broader spectrum. So that's not something where I think we've had to push that hard. It's more that people, that there's almost been a grassroots swell of enthusiasm for that level of data analytics.
So it almost transcends from their social life into their work life.
Yeah, so we've not had to do a lot of change management to kind of make that level of analytics more acceptable to people. It's just been a natural want from people themselves. But I think that's been driven by the consumer tech that's kind of omnipresent in their lives now.
I'd love to know, you're in this role, you're managing innovation for an international law firm. I'm a junior lawyer, or I'll go a rank below that, I'm a trainee. How do I get an idea heard and surfaced in a firm like CMS? And if it's good, what process does it go through to actually potentially getting implemented?
So with the whole kind of innovation structure and strategy at CMS, it's something that we've revisited. So I had this role prior to the merger, but obviously since we've kind of vastly grown in size, we're kind of revisiting our whole kind of approach to this. So we've invested in an ideas management platform, and that's really in its kind of infancy. We've had a kind of couple of soft launches, but the idea is that that will provide some kind of structure, again with the kind of social type of interface, that will allow people, you know, from kind of every level in the business to surface their idea with some degree of transparency, and to actually see how that idea is kind of triaged and potentially enacted. So it's not that we've not been doing this as a business and, you know, trying to kind of generate ideas and working with them, but I think it's, you know, it's always been done by, you know, surveys or email, and then there's a bit of a sense that the idea disappears into a black hole. Or
very siloed.
Yeah, exactly.
Do different areas of the business have a different process to getting an idea from flash to bang?
I think the idea is that there would be a kind of there would be a sort of universal process, but I think in the structure that we've kind of put together, the initial kind of one-page draft around your idea, fundamentally, if you want to put in a kind of £2 million case management system, you'd then sort of flow through a slightly different channel than if you said, you know, we need a new recipe for our biscuits in client meeting rooms. So we want to make sure that we capture every kind of idea, but we want to, at the kind of phase 2 stage, just have the appropriate kind of governance around that to sort of take things through, but without, you know, falling into the kind of classic law firm trap of just kind of crushing all agility.
You're here ultimately for your clients, and your role is to innovate for the firm who serve their clients. What are your clients looking for in 2017 and probably over the next 5 years from a big international firm like CMS?
It's a tricky question and one that we spend a lot of time kind of pondering. I think fundamentally they want an improved client experience. They want a greater degree of sort of seamlessness, you know, less of a deluge of email, you know, better ways to collaborate with us. In terms of cost, they want greater certainty, not necessarily always the lowest price. I think, you know, we may have kind of slightly peaked, you know, on that. I think clients are more interested in sort of value fees. So it's not always about what's cheapest, it's about what's most effective and what delivers the greatest value. But in that, I think they want us to look at how we can deliver a full service offering to them. Because I think what they don't necessarily want to do is, despite all the kind of new players in the market, the alt law providers, you know, the LPO outfits, you know, there's so many kind of people now, but I don't think they necessarily want to manage multiple relationships. In fact, what you see with some of our biggest clients is that actually the number of firms on their panel kind of reduce, you know, every time the cycle turns around. But what I think they do want law firms to do is to show how they would manage the whole of kind of the client's legal spend, and whether that's by the law firm diversifying its model and offering all of these kind of services and capacities themselves, or whether it's the law firm actually acting in a much more kind of collegiate and collaborative way with people who historically have been their competitors and perhaps using technology to facilitate that. So the client has a single kind of point of contact, or but almost there's kind of a degree of outsourcing underneath that, managed by large global law firms. I think that's something that's more acceptable now to people. And actually, you know, we've had clients say, if you were to offer this, or firms that would offer this, we would be, you know, we would really welcome that.
Final question from me. You've been a lawyer, you've ran all sorts of functions within the law firm. How has the culture of the partnership changed from when you first came into law to now? Is it faster to embrace new things than perhaps it had a reputation of being quite traditional in the past? Is that changed? Is that still needing to change?
Yeah, I think it's definitely changed, and you know, with every year that kind of passes, I think the speed of acceptance of change accelerates. Obviously, if probably many of our clients looked at us, they would still say that we have some distance to go. Law is still a relatively conservative sector. But to a certain extent, I think that sometimes is driven by the regulatory framework that we and many of our clients operate in. I think sometimes, particularly in the legal tech startup world, people look at, the big kind of global law firms and wonder why things move so slowly. But I think sometimes, things are not as straightforward for us or actually our clients, because whenever we make a decision, it's not really just us that we're thinking about. It's the impact on a whole host of other heavily regulated, global entities. But certainly, yes, the speed of change and has accelerated.
Jane, thank you so much for your time today. Really looking forward to kind of keeping track on what CMS are doing and keeping on learning from you and your valuable insights that you shared with us today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.